Disclaimer. Twigs Cafe Radio and TwigsCafeRadio.com and its owners and associates take no responsibility for the opinions, statements, or claims made by the talk show hosts or their guests. Statements or show topics are not necessarily the beliefs of the station.
And this is Sanity Check, Libertarian Lou, Tea Party Mike one of these days, but we do have X on the line, and we have Indy Andy in studio. Laurie's still with us, and any moment here now, we're going to bring on Roger Stone. Roger Stone, of course, is the award-winning author here, and recently his new book, The Clintons' War on Women, is a gripping true story about Roger Stone and his vicious sexual assault and rape of dozen innocent women by Bill Clinton and the terror campaign by Hillary to discredit, degrade, and silence these women. Certainly. X, I think we got you in the background there a little bit, or we still got you on the line there?
Yeah, you hear me? We're good?
Yeah, we got you. We got you good there, but we're waiting on Roger. You able to get Roger? Okay, well, we just got his voicemail there for a minute, guys. So we'll keep trying. He just might be right in the middle of something there. So
yeah, I mean, Lou, let me just throw out. The important thing about Roger is that basically he is the insider, sneakster guy that knows where all the skeletons are buried in much of the political apparatus, whether it be on the left or on the right. And the epiphany that he's had in terms of willing to come out and expose most of this. And remember, he wrote a book on the Clintons, and now he's writing Run on the Bush. So you can't say he's partisan in any way. This is a guy that is basically calling the emperor out. He's calling the emperor out for the clothes that he's not wearing, and he's willing to expose the system. And that's really what the system, which is really what we've been talking about all along. The system does not want anybody to show itself. They want to always remain hidden and operate behind the scenes. And Roger's book is, and his books in general, just expose so much of this that is such an important part that, much of it is in contemporary history is something that everybody should pick up because it really lets you know how, let's say, they make the sausage, so to speak.
And like you said, what an interesting individual, and certainly he's been there. He's been in the back rooms. He knows what's going on, and he's providing an insight that many of us do not have. So with that all being said, I'd love to welcome Roger Stone to Sanity Check. Good afternoon, Roger.
Lou, my old friend, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. I can't believe it. This is fantastic. This is our first interview for the new year, and it couldn't be starting off better. Certainly got some of your press releases here and all those things, and I don't even know where you want to start. I think what I'd like to do is just give a little bit of a background or tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I really want to dig in to some of the nitty-gritty on this Clinton's war on women, and then Jeb Bush if we have the time, or at least if you have the time.
Sure. Well, I'm a political animal. I'm a veteran of 9 national Republican presidential campaigns, and at least one libertarian that I supported for president. I have great sentimental attachment to the old Republican Party. That's the party of Barry Goldwater. That was a small government party that wanted government out of your personal life, out of your business, and
out of your bedroom.
Sadly, out of your bedroom. Well, that's what I was implying with personal life.
Yep.
And sadly, that Republican Party doesn't even exist anymore. Both parties have really morphed into one party. It's the Wall Street Party. It's the party of endless war, massive debt, erosion of our civil liberties, high taxes on working people, while the hedge fund managers on Wall Street pay almost nothing. The two parties are indistinguishable. I mean, it really breaks my heart, but at a certain point I figured out that between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, despite the fact that they tried to sound different, there was no difference at all. You may recall Obama was going to close Guantanamo Bay. Hasn't happened. He was going to bring our troops home from Afghanistan. Yes, now he's talking about sending troops to Syria.
Right.
I mean, nothing really changes. It's one-party government. I lived in Washington for 30 years. I worked in the Senate as a top aide to Senator Bob Dole. I worked in the House as an aide to Congressman Robert Steele, who was on the Budget Committee. I've seen the sausage being made.
Yep.
And it's ugly. I mean, the truth is, if you have money, and the right connections, you can buy anything you want in Washington. Anything. Government policy, contracts, whatever it may be. The system is completely flooded with special interest money, lobbyist money, special pleader money, and the two parties are like a kabuki dance. They fight in front of the TV cameras during the day, and then they all go to dinner at night, slap each other in the back, and say, well, we put it over on them one more time. It's all about re-election. Spend all their time chasing campaign contributions. In any event, so I am at this point, at least, a member of the Libertarian Party. Like Teddy Roosevelt, like Ron Paul, I could go back to the Republican Party someday if I thought there was a fight there worth being in. If I thought the Liberty wing of the party had some upside potential.
Yeah, or stood a chance.
But in the meantime, surprisingly somewhat, the candidacy of Rand Paul has fallen entirely flat. I'm not sure that's really his fault, so much as the issue agenda with the rise of ISIS and the unrest in the Middle East has made an anti-interventionist, foreign policy very unattractive to many Americans at this point. And then secondarily, you see Rand talking about the drug war, talking about the fact that we're incarcerating, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of young African Americans. Those are great general election issues, but they're not very good nomination issues. So, for the time being, I'm a registered libertarian. I'm supporting Donald Trump for president. He's been a friend of mine for 37 years. I left his campaign in August for two reasons, really. One, I'm a political strategist by trade. That's what I do. What I've done for dozens of candidates for the U.S. Senate, for governor, and at least 9 candidates for president of the United States. The truth is, Donald Trump is his own strategist. And you've got to hand it to him. The strategy is going pretty well.
Yes. I actually wrote this down, when we were just talking about buying everything. I think that's what people are finding appealing about Trump, because that's exactly what he's saying. He's saying, hey, wait a minute here. I have the money. I could buy anything and anything I want to do, and that's the way the game is played. So if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, Roger, we're going to constantly keep getting the same results. And all the politicians know how the game is played, and he plays by a different set of rules, right?
Well, I think that's the thing that makes him most attractive to voters, is that he doesn't need anybody else's money. In other words, you can't buy Trump. You can't bully Trump. He's not taking any campaign contributions from special interests or billionaires or lobbyists. And I think they know, were he to get to Washington, you can't buy influence with Trump. It would be the first time we had an American president whose only responsibility was to the taxpayers, to the Americans. And that scares the living daylights out of the lobbyist consultant class in Washington. They are wetting their pants about the possibility of a Trump candidacy. And I'll go one step further and tell you this, Lou. I think that the only way to beat Hillary Clinton is to go at her frontally. No, Hillary, you're not an advocate for women and girls. You've actually abused and bullied all the women who are your husband's rape and sexual abuse victims. No, Hillary, your tenure at the State Department was a disaster. You're responsible for this mess in the Middle East now. And then the third leg of the stool, the $2 billion global fraud, which is the Clinton Foundation. This isn't a charity. This is a slush fund for grifters. This is a vehicle for the facilitation of multi-million-dollar bribes. So if Hillary had a contract on her desk at the State Department, a multi-million-dollar contract, all you had to do was to give a very sizable contribution to the Clinton Foundation, give a few speaking honorariums in the six-figure range to Bill and Hillary, and you could buy anything you wanted. It's wholesale theft. I mean, it's a scam, and she's responsible for it. You've got to take her on these issues. I can't see a Marco Rubio doing that. I just think he's in the club. too genteel. You can't go about this in a genteel way. She's a fraud and a criminal, and you need to prove it. You need to prosecute that and prove it in your campaign. Trump's got the cojones to do that. I don't see any of these other guys having the guts to do that.
I mean, I can't argue with you on that point, and I think that's proving itself out. You said that there were two reasons that you're supporting Trump. We'll just stay on this for a minute.
Well, the one reason I left was because it was really superfluous. I couldn't be his campaign strategist if he was his campaign strategist. And, it's his money, it's his name, it's his time, it's his future. He has the right to do it his way. We remain very good friends. I'm a supporter. I actually think I do more good for him out in the media than I could do in the back rooms. I did a Fox yesterday and today on the Clintons' war on women. The other reason, in all honesty, was I didn't want anyone to think that my book on the Clintons' war on women, was somehow a Trump-funded or inspired project, because it's not. I do think it's serendipitous that this is the opposition research that he will need, or any Republican would need, to beat Hillary. But I didn't write it for him, although I did write it for that purpose. So it's an act of political action, as well as obviously a commercial enterprise. I want to sell as many books as I can. The Clintons are very aggressive in trying to keep this book off the bestseller lists. As you may have read, hours after the book was released, I went on to look on Amazon to see how it was doing, and I saw that I had an inordinate number of negative reviews that had been posted, one-star reviews, all of them very short, a sentence. This book is a piece of crap, Stone is a crackpot, that kind of stuff. And, using some technology and some friends, I was able to trace most of these emails to a URL at the Clinton headquarters in Brooklyn, New York. So there is and to their credit, Amazon took those reviews down when my lawyers contacted them. So to the extent that that they can, they realize if my book, The Clintons' War on Women, which is a true story of sexual assault, rape, intimidation, strong-arm tactics, lies, cover-up, drugs, both drug use and drug trafficking, corruption, greed, multi-billion-dollar greed, and deep Clinton family secrets, to the extent that they can keep that book out of the media, they are attempting to do so. I mean, there's a lot of bombshells in this book.
I was going to ask you, if there is one or two that you want to share, so, maybe...
Well, the most significant one, in all honesty, is Hillary says Black Lives Matter. Well, they matter unless you're Danny Williams, because he is the son of Bill Clinton, the abandoned, rejected African-American son of Bill Clinton. He is the product of a union between Bobby Ann Williams, who was a coke-addicted prostitute, who had sex with Bill Clinton on at least 13 occasions. And Danny is most definitely Bill's son. We know that because Bobby Wayne Williams said under oath that she had not had sex with any white man in the year previous to Danny's birth. Danny looks exactly like his dad. And in 1999, well, let me step ahead. This issue really began when Danny's mother and his aunt, Lucille Bolton, who's a church lady, took him to the gubernatorial mansion, demanded to see Hillary. Hillary basically turned them away. She ultimately met with Lucille Bolton, Danny Williams' aunt, and she simply asked, "Is it true that Danny Williams is my husband's son?" And she was told that it was. And then she said, "Well, and what's the problem?" She said, "Well," Bolton said, "a lot of reporters are starting to ask questions about it." So Hillary said, "Well, here's the name and phone number of a private detective. He can shut those reporters down." That's the extent of her involvement. Wow. In other words, they don't step up, they don't do the right thing. Now, I prove in my book that Bill Clinton was having Arkansas state troopers deliver Christmas presents to Danny's house every Christmas. Hillary is the one who banished him. In 1999, the Star tabloid published a story saying that a DNA test that they had conducted showed that Danny Williams was not the son of Bill Clinton. I have learned that in 1999, the Star was owned by a man named Robert Altman. My goodness, Lou, he was Bill Clinton's roommate at Georgetown. He's given over $500,000 to the various Clinton campaigns and endeavors. The new owners of the Star, American media, were very gracious in opening their files. There is no DNA test. Danny Williams is Bill Clinton's son. That means that Bill Clinton, the same guy who cut funding to single mothers in his welfare reform package, is a deadbeat dad. Danny Williams has never been acknowledged, loved, nurtured, or supported. Danny's got 5 kids of his own. He struggles to put food on the table this Christmas, this Thanksgiving. Bill Clinton, his father, is worth $100 million.
Yeah, I was wondering
the wealthiest of ex-presidents we've ever had, and the only president who's been willing to lobby on behalf of foreign governments after leaving the presidency.
Yeah, I was going to say tongue-in-cheek. I thought maybe the Clinton Foundation would have sent some Christmas packages to Danny Williams, but and his family, but I guess not. You know, how many women? I think if I was reading this correctly, also is that we know about the Willies. You know, all the women that have come forward. A lot of them have been hushed up. But it seems as though there was a lot more, some over in Europe and all over the place, right, that have made claims against Bill Clinton. And how does Hillary play a role in all of that and keeping this quiet, Roger?
Well, I think there's 2 things here. We have to make a distinction between consensual sex and sexual assault. There's
Correct.
A big difference. My book is not about Bill's marital infidelity or his adultery or his cheating, or his girlfriends, or his mistresses. I'm really not interested in all of that.
Neither am I.
It's about something much uglier. Rape, sexual assault. Bill Clinton is a Bill Cosby-type sexual predator. And many of these women have come forward. Juanita Broderick, Kathleen Willey, Paula Corbin-Jones, who got an $850,000 payment from the Clintons to settle a civil suit without admission of guilt, but you don't pay $850,000 to make a lawsuit go away unless you're guilty. And this list goes on and on. Liz Ward Grayson, Eileen Wellstone, Becky Brown, Helen Dowdy, Dorothy Kyle Browning. The list goes on and on. These are women who have specifically accused Clinton of assault. Now, Hillary, the other night on CNN, Don Lemon said, well, Bill Clinton's past is irrelevant to Hillary. No, it isn't, not at all, because Hillary runs the cover-up. Hillary is an accessory after the fact. It's Hillary who hires the heavy-handed private detectives who wage a veritable terror campaign to silence these women. Kathleen Willey, who wrote the introduction for my book, The Clintons' War on Women, tells of her home being broken into and ransacked, her car having the tires slashed, the windshield broken, her pet cat being killed, put on her doorstep, her children being threatened by name, all by a private detective who boasted about being retained by Hillary Clinton. Hillary is the one who runs the Sluts and Nuts campaign against Monica Lewinsky. Now, that's a consensual relationship where the president seduced a 22-year-old intern, but it's still Hillary who wants to denigrate her and discredit her, as if it's her fault. She's a stalker, Hillary says. I think the fault belongs with her husband, who is, almost 4 decades older and wiser than Monica Lewinsky. So Hillary can't walk away with this because she's the point person in the cover-up. She's the one who runs the operation. I think she wears the pants in their relationship. They have a marriage of convenience. It's a business arrangement. Bill has humiliated her repeatedly. She doesn't seem to care. She's more intent on silencing those women who have come forward. that makes her an abuser of women rather than an advocate for women. Only a week ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, she put out a video aimed at college girls saying, if you are the victim of sexual assault, you deserve to be believed.
Yeah.
But what about Bill's victims? Do they not deserve to be believed?
No, I mean, it's the questions are, I mean, right there. Endless. Hey, Roger, I'm going to blast right through because I know your time is pretty valuable here, and I just appreciate you spending the time with us. So I'm going to go right past our breaks here and everything else. But I have X on the line. He probably has a question. Andy Ostrowski here, who ran for Congress up here in Northeast Pennsylvania as a Democrat, and he's looking to run as an independent this time around. Andy, you had a quick question for me?
Roger, nice to talk to you, and thanks for joining us here on Twigs Cafe Radio. Just out of curiosity, did you, and as a test of the measure of the credibility of the book, have you received any lawyer letters from any of the Clintons' lawyers or anybody else threatening you with defamation, challenging you on any of your accusations or any of your factual statements?
The worst part about writing a book like this is your own lawyers, never mind theirs. The lawyers for my publisher, the $800 an hour lawyers who are experts in libel and slander, they put me through the ringer on every word in this book, every sentence. And it all survived. Nothing came out of the book. In a few cases, I had to add some additional documentation. But I must tell you, I fear no lawsuit because everything in my book is true, and a lawsuit would be a terrific forum to prove it. In other words, if the Clintons sued me, I would be entitled under the law to question them about anything in this book under oath. We know how they've both avoided being questioned under oath, so I really have no fear of a lawsuit. Somebody wrote a pretty good story on this online. The reason I'm not being sued is because everything I said is true.
Yeah, and you can't...
And that's the implication.
Yeah, that's exactly right. X, you still on?
Yeah, I am. Roger, can you just tell me how many people...
Yep.
Oh.
I'm sorry, X.
I lost you there.
Yeah, the connection with him calling in too, Roger, is might not be the best. So, as far as the Clintons' war on women goes, once again, Trump is what you're thinking is probably the only one that could really just really put it out there, or is probably the most powerful one to really take Hillary head on.
Well, I think it's going to take an enormous guts because they have a spin machine and they're very adept. Look, she started this. She's the one who claimed that Trump was bullying her. So she played the gender card, and he called her on it. And now today she says she's not going to address it anymore. She's going to let Trump live in his own reality. That's a retreat. She's retreating. Why? Because she's busted. Now, if you don't see Juanita Broderick and Kathleen Willey and Paula Jones and a dozen others on Trump's campaign plane this October, I'll kiss your feet. This is going to happen. Those women are going to be in the mass media. Here's a rule I learned a long time ago. Don't pick a fight with a billionaire.
There you go. You got that one right.
In the days of Citizens United, Donald Trump can afford to have those women in every household on television every night. So I think that the Clintons have bitten off a bit more than they can chew. In all honesty, having dodged so many bullets, Whitewater, selling pardons for campaign contributions, selling nuclear secrets to the Chinese for campaign contributions, Monica Lewinsky, stealing the china and the furniture and the silver when they left the White House. I mean, this list goes on and on. They've dodged all these bullets. Why they don't ride off into the sunset with their wealth, with their stolen wealth, and their public acclaim, I don't know. Because she chooses to run, she needs to understand that it's old news is not going to be an acceptable answer to anything. Everything they have done is back on the table for re-examination. Just because they dodged a bullet last time does not mean they will dodge a bullet politically, of course, this time. So, I mean, I think this is going to be a really rough, very revealing rock'em sock'em campaign. Again, I think Trump's the only one with the guts to wage the kind of campaign against the Clintons you would need to run to win.
You know, I'm getting text. People are all kinds of questions here. How many Bill Clinton victims would you think?
Well, if you tried to total up his affairs, his consensual section, the number would run into the thousands, literally the thousands. I identified at least 24 women that I believe he either assaulted, exposed himself, or raped. And that is pretty well documented in the book.
You got a new book coming out, the Bush, Jeb and the Bush crime family. I just got another text. Please ask him about the drug running between Bush and Clinton. Do you have time to talk a little bit about the new book that you have coming out? What?
Well, for those who say, well, Stone's just a reliable, Republican right-wing hitman, I kind of disprove that in my next book, which will be out January 26th, which is entitled Jeb and the Bush crime family. We focus first on Jeb, his shady business dealings, his using the governor's office to enrich himself after leaving office, for example, giving Lehman Brothers the management of the state pensions and then getting a $2 million bonus check when he joined Lehman Brothers 2 days after leaving the governorship. I don't know, where I grew up, they call that a bribe.
Yep.
Jeb running drugs, dealing drugs in Houston, in Miami, in college, in boarding school. That's all in the book. You can imagine the lawyers loved that one. But documented in the book. Prescott Bush, the patriarch of the Bush family. The family money was made arming the Nazis. He armed Hitler. They made a little more money because they owned a steel mill in Germany that was using slave labor from Auschwitz. Prescott Bush. Then you have George H.W. Bush. Your caller, your texter is exactly right. During the Reagan administration, after the Congress cut off funding for the Nicaraguan rebels through the Boland Amendment, George H.W. Bush was in charge of a secret operation to traffic cocaine into the United States to sell it in order to raise the money to illegally arm the Contras. This became known as Iran-Contra. They were dealing both drugs and weapons. They had a hard time finding a place to bring the drugs in. The governors of Texas and Louisiana and the state police in those two states would not cooperate in what was obviously an illegal operation. They did find a governor, however, who was more than happy to take his cut. Bill Clinton, the governor of Arkansas. And therefore the Bushes and the Clintons worked closely to traffic drugs through Mena, Arkansas, all of which has been documented and all of which is told in great detail in my book.
This is unbelievable. A couple of the other things was I'm looking at not only now other texts coming in, but also from your press release, how he avoided prosecution on the fraudulent federal loan, and of course his hypocrisy on the war on drugs, despite his own shocking drug history. It's just amazing, the hypocrisy of it all.
Well, it is something I refer to as elite deviance. There are certain people in the country who are so wealthy, so connected, so powerful that the law just doesn't apply for them. So Jeb made a very bad investment in an office building, and he was on the hook for $4 million. He got a taxpayer-financed federal bailout because Daddy was vice president. That would never have happened for Lou or Roger, just regular guys. So, it's a story of privilege and elitism and connections and oil and corruption. The Clintons and the Bushes have worked very closely together, and they've boosted millions of dollars. They formed a nonprofit, a charitable nonprofit, to theoretically aid in the Haitian earthquake relief. They raised $138 million. They spent $10 million in Haiti. They split the rest. This is the Bush-Clinton crime syndicate, as they like to call them.
It's unbelievable, huh, Randy?
And if I can chime in with a question here, and it kind of begs a bigger question for me, and be it on the side of the Clintons or the side of the Bushes. We have a Clinton and a Bush both in this race. and they are running, and we're going to presume for the purpose of my question that everything that you're saying is true because it hasn't been rebutted, and if things aren't rebutted, they can be accepted as true. They both are running, having made the calculation that nobody's going to believe this, that this isn't going to get out there. So, what is your thought on why, in the face of this kind of evidence, why the Clintons, like you said, they could have packed up and gone away and taken their money and rode off into the sunset. And Jeb Bush certainly didn't have to come out of the woodwork and run in this campaign with all these other candidates out there. What is the thinking behind that, and what is their calculation here that they're playing on this, that this won't come out?
I think it's twofold. One, it's power lust. They can't help themselves because power is the opportunity for more money, and the money is the opportunity for more power. Also, I think they're counting on a complacent and pliable mainstream media. Mm-hmm. Already we see the mainstream media trying to deflect Hillary's problems and Bill's problems to a discussion of adultery and marital infidelity. Then they're able to say, look, that's their private business. You shouldn't go there. Why are you in the toilet, as Donna Brazile said yesterday? They don't want this to be about the real issues, which, of course, is Bill's history as a sexual predator and Hillary's history running the cover-up and essentially being an accessory after the fact in those sex crimes. They don't want to talk that. The Clintons and the Bushes have both gotten enormous cover from the mainstream media, and I think they expected it to continue. The problem is
Trump.
Trump is one big problem, but the other problem for them is the change in how we communicate. Between the internet, cable television, and talk radio shows like this, you can no longer control the information. There was a time when we only had 3 television networks, and therefore if it didn't happen there, it didn't happen. Now, there's alternatives, so I'll just take a crazy shot. If you don't believe that Oswald killed Kennedy and acted alone, well, there was no place to get information about that 30 years ago, but today there is. You can get alternative points of view and alternative information through the democratization of our communications that has been led by the Internet. And therefore, it's much harder to contain the truth. It's why I've written these books. It's why I'm continually writing for Breitbart and Breitbart News and the Daily Caller, because I think there's a constituency out there for the truth.
Yeah, and that was really, the point of my question was, the implications of this are they are making this calculation that they have a complicit media and a complacent public, and nobody's, they're just going to vilify you and vilify anybody who's out there talking about the information, get the media to go along with them, and, the people will just go along with what they're told by the media. I mean, that has to be the calculation.
No, it's an attempt to discredit anybody who's a critic. In other words, look, I'm not an angel, but I'm not running for president. You can attack me if you want, but it doesn't have any bearing on my book. Now, you can read my book and choose to believe it, or you can read my book and choose not to believe it. I just ask people to make their own judgment. There's 50 pages of source notes here, and there's 586 footnotes. So, and I tell you where I got my information. So I ask people to make their own judgments. There's nobody more surprised this year than Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton. Jeb Bush, because the family has worn out their welcome. The American people do not want another Bush, period. And there was an expectation that, like his brother, he was just going to roll into this and pick it up like somebody would pick up a hat that they checked or a coat that they checked. And it hadn't gone down that way, despite the fact that he pulled in $100 million in mostly Wall Street money for a super PAC, which is an extraordinary number. He spent $50 million on television advertising to date, and he has nothing to show for it. He is running 5th. Nationally, he's somewhere between 3 and 5% of the vote. And, of course, the other person who's most surprised is Hillary, because by saying that college victims of sexual assault deserve to be believed, she decided to lead with her chin. And Trump has not let her get away with it. She does not want to discuss the real history of her husband and her role in it, and Trump has rather forced that, in my view.
A couple of easier questions here, Roger. A little bit. I have an individual wants to know who's the, if you even have one, the most genuine politician you ever met, and maybe the biggest hypocrite that you ever met.
Well, let's see. That's difficult.
I was going to say it could be a long list.
Yeah, or if there's anyone genuine.
Yeah, no. Well, the first one's harder. I must tell you, having worked in 3 presidential campaigns for Ronald Reagan in '76, in '80, and 1984, he was the most consistent. Meaning, the Reagan you saw in public was the same Reagan you saw in private. Easygoing, balanced, optimistic, friendly, slow to anger, just very comfortable in his own skin. And then, even though I have written about him and admire some of his traits, Nixon was entirely different in private than he was in public. He was very stiff in public. He was far more charming and loquacious in private, in small groups. He was a stiff on television. He was a very kind of awkward and formal presenter. So I found him to be far more likable in private, and I spent a lot of time with him in private.
What a wealth of knowledge here, isn't this? This is great stuff.
Well, I must tell you, one time I came up to, I went to Nixon's house in Saddle River, New Jersey, and I arrived about cocktail time, and the former president said to me, "Would you like a silver bullet?" And, of course, at first I didn't know what he meant. And I said, "Sir, I'm not sure I understand." He said, "Do you want a martini?" And I said, "Sure, absolutely." And he said, "Well, I have a special recipe." So he pulled out a cocktail shaker, filled it with ice. We were drinking vodka martinis. He filled it with vodka. Then he went in the refrigerator, and he had a jar of olives. He said he had drained the water and the olive juice, and he'd filled it with vermouth. And he took out one olive. He put it in each one of our drinks. And of course, it was terrific. And I said, "Well, Mr. President, you make an incredible martini." And he said, "Yeah, I got the recipe from Winston Churchill."
Well, this is really good stuff, man. What's a common misconception about you? That's another question I just got.
I'm really a warm and fuzzy and lovable guy, Lou.
I know you are.
All this hitman talk, all about how I'm a paid assassin. That's all BS.
Wow.
I'm a warm, wonderful guy.
I don't know that Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush are agreeing with you on that one, but we will. We definitely do.
And maybe, because I know this has been a long interview for you, but for those that don't know, Mr. Stone's 10th annual Best and Worst Dressed list for 2015. I got another question here. What's your best fashion tip for men, and what's the best advice for women there, Roger?
Well, this is a tradition that I picked up from a guy named Mr. Blackwell. Mr. Blackwell was a Hollywood-based designer, and from starting in the 30s until the 70s, he would publish every year a list of the 10 best and dressed worst people in the world. And he was vicious. I mean, he could make you or break you if you were a socialite or a business person or an athlete, or particularly an actor or an actress. He could really make your career, or he could really hurt your career. And he died several years ago, actually 10 years ago now, about 11 years ago, and I decided to revive this habit. So every New Year's Day, I put out a list of the best and worst dressed people in the world. And it's been great fun. And, I look at the world of sports and entertainment and politics and so on. You can go to stonezone.com.
I was just reading.
Stonezone.com.
Uh-huh.
And the list is up. The list is up there with a little bit about our philosophy. You see, there's a difference between style and fashion. Style will always look good. The same garment, the same design that you wear today will look good 30 years from now. Fashion, on the other hand, is temporary. It's fleeting. It's like a fad. And therefore, people are, they need to stick to style and ignore changing fashions. The best advice that I can give men when they're going out, no, you don't need to spend a fortune on clothing, but you do need to purchase things that are well made. And if you take care of them, they'll last you a long time. Avoid dry cleaning, because dry cleaning uses chemicals that break down the fibers, particularly those that are dyed a dark color, because it puts an additional stress on the fiber. But if you go to stoneonstyle.com, which is my men's fashion and style website, I've written quite a few articles about how to build a basic wardrobe without breaking the bank. And if you go to stonezone.com, you can see this year's best and worst list. My producer is frantically signaling me I got to jump onto another show. So it has been great, guys. I appreciate being with you. And Lou, I follow your newspaper religiously.
Roger, thank you so much for coming here. I want to invite you here to Twigs Cafe and here in Tunkhannock. This is where we broadcast from. And I'll see you somewhere along the campaign trail, whether it's in New York City or maybe down at the Libertarian Convention or who knows where else. So thanks so much for your time, and I really appreciate the insights that you've been able to share with us.
Lou, I appreciate being with you. Many thanks.
You betcha.